I have several cast iron skillets of varying sizes that I use regularly, and most of them were purchased at thrift stores or garage sales. I didn't pay full price, and some of them are fairly old. So when YouTube suggested a video related to discerning the value of cast iron skillets, I watched it. And then I wrote a Bible devotion based on the value of cast iron compared to the value of you.
Talking to you, and I'm talking to you.
Because that's how I roll. That video's content creator discussed character traits to look for in cast iron skillets that impact their monetary value. He went over artistic design elements, functional design elements, the difference between items with texture versus those with smooth as glass surfaces, the history of brand names, and he even went into legal requirements for some skillets to have a country of origin stamp. It was interesting. It was informative. And I immediately went over to my cast iron collection hanging on the wall, compared them to the standards described in the video. According to those standards, my cast iron isn't valuable at all. It's practically worthless, in monetary terms. But I use them regularly. I'm never gonna sell them, and they'll still be functional to provide food for people long after my body rots away, providing food for the microorganisms living in the soil, 6 feet underground. So, from that perspective, my cast iron is priceless. I'm struck by the apparent contradiction. How can the same cast iron collection be practically worthless and simultaneously priceless? I also have a small stuffed tiger given to me by my best friend when I was a child. It's currently worth about $15 on eBay. I looked it up. It means more to me than money though, because it reminds me of him. That makes it priceless to me. While I couldn't verify my wife's value on eBay, she's priceless to me too. And I have baseball cards that were worth hundreds of dollars each at one point. Values changed though, and now they are only worth a couple of bucks a piece. It's just a simple fact of life that value is subjective. Value changes. Different things are worth more or less to different people at different times under different circumstances. So that brings me to the question, how much are you worth? What's your value?
How much are you worth now?
How much is a life worth?
How much is your life worth?
How much am I worth to you?
How much is that one worth?
It depends.
How can you say that?
Because value and worth are subjective. Therefore, it depends on the perspective. Whether it's your value, the value of someone else, the value of other living creatures, inanimate objects, or even experiences and memories. The value of all those things depend on how you choose to see them. King Solomon made so much money that all of his drinking utensils were made of gold, and all of his eating utensils were made of gold. He made billions of dollars each year. God gave him riches, wealth, and honor, such as none of the kings who were in Israel prior to Solomon possessed, nor any of the kings after Solomon. As king, he made silver and gold as plentiful in Jerusalem as stones. Side note, this might be the earliest recorded mention of trickle-down economics. And it worked. And yet, even with all that earthly wealth, Solomon said that a good reputation is better than great wealth, and good relationships are better than silver and gold. He said that instruction is preferred over silver, knowledge is preferred over gold, and wisdom is better than jewels. In fact, all desirable things are worth less than wisdom. Paul was willing to give up everything for Jesus. More than that, he said, I count all things to be loss in view of the surpassing value of just knowing Christ. Paul is saying that following God is worth more than all of his worldly possessions. This is similar to the widow in Mark 12, who donated 2 lepta coins to the temple's treasury. While there is some debate as to how much money that is in today's terms, it ranges anywhere from half a penny to up to about $2. It really doesn't matter though, because as Jesus points out, that was all she owned, all she had to live on. Hear this though. The lesson there isn't that we need to donate all of our possessions to the church. God doesn't need our money. He doesn't even care about our money. He doesn't care about what kind of car, if any, we drive. He doesn't care if we're male or female, and he doesn't care about our skin color. He doesn't care about our power, our authority, or our influence. He doesn't care how many people friend us on Facebook, follow us on X, or subscribe to our YouTube channels. He cares about who we are on the inside. He cares about our hearts. He cares about whether or not we are committed to him. For God does not see as man sees. Since man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart, the soul, the inner substance that drives us and motivates us as individuals. This is where value is held. Are we driven to follow him? Are we seeking his kingdom and his righteousness? Are we storing up treasures in heaven? For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your heart is your value. Your soul is your value. But how much is your soul worth to you? For what good will it do to a person if he gains the whole world but forfeits his soul? Which is more important to you? How the world values you or how God values you? From the world's perspective, we each have a value, with some people owing more money to creditors than they will ever be able to repay.
Oh, man.
And on the opposite extreme, there are billionaires who have a net worth larger than most countries. From God's perspective, we each have value as well. Some are wheat, which will be gathered together to be preserved. And on the opposite extreme, there are others who are chaff, debris, garbage, which will be swept up and discarded. Later in Matthew, Jesus uses an analogy of sheep and goats. He separates them, just as he separated the wheat from the chaff. Then he discards the worthless ones and gives eternal life to those he deems priceless. Note, though, that there's no correlation between those values. Someone's worldly value has no impact at all on that person's heavenly value. So how can the same cast iron collection be practically worthless and simultaneously priceless? Well, it depends on your perspective. From a material wealth perspective, my collection isn't worth that much at all. To me, though, I use those skillets to prepare nourishment. I use them to cook food. I use them to prolong life. And life is priceless. Just like cast iron, people get banged up. We get scratched and can develop spots of rust and decay. Food can get baked on, and sometimes skillets lose their seasoning. To the untrained eye, this makes the cast iron cookware unusable, and it destroys its value. But cast iron can be restored. It can be refreshed. Its usefulness can be brought back to life. As the saying goes, Jesus saves. Jesus can reseason cast iron. Are you worth more than cast iron? If so, Jesus can reseason you, just as he reseasoned Kat Von D. With Jesus, she went from being wasted to being washed in the blood of Christ. From God's perspective, she went from worthless to priceless. Do you want to know more about her salvation story? If so, watch this video next.